I'm Richard Babor. I've been a surgeon for almost 20 years. It's the only thing I've ever really wanted to do.
Mostly, I operate on cancer patients. Surgery's not pretty, but at least it offers a chance of cure. This is the sharp end of cancer. Most patients I treat ask the same question. What could I have done not to get cancer?
And I have to admit, I just don't know. I've lost friends and loved ones to cancer too, and I see the suffering it brings every day here at work.
No one's to blame for getting cancer, but we can all reduce our risk. I've decided to explore the other side of the cancer story, prevention. 1 in 3 of us will get cancer at some point in our lifetimes. What would it take to improve those odds? In this episode, we'll explore how medicine and technology can prevent cancer. We'll discover how you can stop cancer being passed down through families, and find out how future cancer prevention could be right under our noses. We'll take a journey into alternative technologies and examine how genetic engineering can reduce our cancer risk. Medical and technological breakthroughs are revolutionising cancer prevention. I'd like to get a sense of how not to get cancer.
In 2013, world-famous actress and pop culture icon Angelina Jolie elected to have a double mastectomy even though she didn't have cancer. She discovered that she had an 87% risk of developing breast cancer because she carried the defective BRCA1 gene. Her story captured world headlines and helped change the way that we think about cancer prevention. Following her New York Times op-ed about her operation, DNA testing for the BRCA gene mutation shot up by 64%. Within the cancer community, that's become known as the Angelina Jolie effect.
Angelina Jolie had a strong family history of breast and ovarian cancer, and she had her breasts removed and recently her ovaries removed. So it's led to an increased number of men and women coming forward wondering whether they are actually a carrier of a cancer gene like Angelina.
So we have tests for most of the inherited cancer syndromes. Should we all be getting tested?
We may come to that day. At the moment, it's probably only those that are at increased risk by knowledge of their family history are the ones that probably need to be genetically tested. This is something that needs to be handled very carefully. The implications of being diagnosed with a cancer gene are immense, for both the individual and the entire family.
It's estimated that between 3 and 10 in every 100 cancers are linked to a faulty inherited gene. This is how cancer gets passed down through families. The technology to detect genetic cancer has progressed enormously in recent years, which offers hope for people who carry it. When Mary's mother developed stomach cancer, it prompted her family to investigate whether they carry a cancer gene.
About a week before she passed away, she pushed to get genetic testing done because we had also lost my sister to gastric cancer about 16 years before, and I just didn't want to even think about or believe that it could be genetic. But once she had passed, I knew for my children, I had to be tested. When they said you need to come down to get the news, I knew even more that, okay, I've got it, otherwise they would have just told me over the phone. But I went down with my husband and my 2-year-old son at the time, and when they said that I was positive, my heart broke more for my husband and my kids. It was probably about a day where I just cried, asking myself why me and why do I have to go through this? Why do my kids have to go through this? But after about a day or so of feeling sorry for myself, I guess, it was a matter of just, okay, now what do I need to do?
The odds are very high, specifically for gastric cancer, more than 80%, I think, carriers get gastric cancer. And for breast cancer, it's around 60%.
Once you found out that you were a carrier of the CDH1 mutation, what did you decide to do?
In my mind, it was like a ticking bomb waiting to go off. And it may not have gone off for a while, and it may have gone off a day after I found out about the gene. So I have my stomach taken out ASAP to prevent any kind of stomach cancer. And then going through a double mastectomy to prevent the breast cancer. I do get quite a few people telling me that they think that it is drastic, but to me, it was the only choice.
Some people might think what Mary's done is pretty extreme, but there are actually many body organs that we can live without. Every organ has a purpose, but they're not all necessary for survival.
Colon, testes, breasts, appendix, gallbladder, spleen, uterus, ovaries, and stomach. You can even take out a kidney and a lung, as you only need one of each.
So for people who are carrying a cancer gene, removing susceptible body parts can be a lifesaver.
One of the challenges of not having a stomach is I can't eat a piece of steak and anything like that anymore because it's quite hard to digest. I don't have the hunger feeling. That's removed, so I never feel hungry. I can probably do maybe like a half a normal size plate. My husband always jokes, says that I'm a cheap date now, so.
Looks nice.
Mary is 3 years and 3 surgeries into the process of preventing cancer. Tonight is the eve of her last surgery, breast reconstruction.
So today will hopefully mark the end of my CDH1 surgery journey. When I look at the scar, it actually reminds me of what I've been through, and I have a sense of pride in knowing that I've taken action. My mum had the same scar, so it kind of reminds me of her a little bit. I'll never complain about having this gene or that it's unfair or anything like that, because how lucky am I that I had an opportunity to do something when both my sister and my mum didn't. My mum and my sister essentially have saved my life.
Surgery is a drastic but effective way to prevent cancer. Mary's risk of developing breast cancer has now dropped to 5%, and her risk of stomach cancer has dropped to 0. Mary's children also have a 50% chance of inheriting the gene. It will be up to them to decide if they wish to be genetically tested when they're adults. For all of us, screening offers the best chance of cancer prevention. The simple rule with cancer is, the earlier the detection, the better chance of cure. Early detection techniques have made a remarkable impact on cancer mortality, as it stops it before it spreads through the body. Screening may seem like bog standard cancer prevention, but it's actually the gold standard. And now early detection is so good, we can spot cancer in the precancerous stages. Precancers that can be identified are bowel cancer, skin cancer, some breast cancers, and cervical cancer. Rachel was only 26 years old when routine screening, called a smear test, revealed she had precancerous cells in her cervix, which means they were on their way to becoming full-blown cancer. As one of the fastest female surf ski paddlers in the world, she wasn't used to being stopped in her tracks.
I just went to my local GP, had a smear test, actually wanting me to go back in, and I guess I was pretty much thinking of the worst outcome. I guess when they call you back in, something's definitely not right. So I was very frightened at that point, yeah. My results came back as abnormal, what they call SIN 2 and 3, which are kind of the pre-cancerous cells before they turn cancerous.
Were you surprised about that at your age?
Yes, very. I think I was about 26 at the time, so quite young.
Cancer is primarily a disease of old age, but cervical cancer is different because virtually all cases are caused through contracting a virus called human papillomavirus, commonly known as HPV. Early screening may well have saved Rachel's life, and she had a simple procedure to remove the precancerous cells.
They put a local anaesthetic in and they burn the cells of the cervix. It's like not a nice experience to go through. I think that some people would not go get screened because they don't want to find out that they may have it, but I would highly recommend, going through the screening process.
HPV is contracted through sexual intercourse, but it has nothing to do with sexual promiscuity. It's extremely common. An estimated 80% of all adults carry it. HPV causes about 5% of the world's cancers. It can cause mouth, anus, penis and vagina cancers, and most commonly, cancer of the cervix. But it's also one of the most avoidable cancers.
Remarkably, we now have the tools to eradicate cancers caused by HPV with a tried and true method. Vaccination has been around for over a century and has saved millions of lives. We can't inoculate against cancer because it's not infectious, but we can immunise against viruses that cause cancer.
Morning, welcome to Green Meadows Intermediate. We have 143 students for the HPV.
Here at Green Meadows Intermediate School in Auckland, the kids are getting an injection of a vaccine called Gardasil 9. It targets the type of HPV responsible for around 90% of cervical and other HPV-related cancers.
Do you know why you're here this morning? For HPV injection. So today you get your first one, and in 6 months' time you'll have your second one. Okay? Yeah. Now, are you allergic to anything?
No, I'm feeling all right. You have breakfast this morning?
The vaccination is given at a young age to protect them before they become sexually active. But do the kids have the full picture of how this jab will protect them?
What's HPV?
It's a disease which can be transferred through sex, and it can get genital warts on your sex organs, and it can also, let's say, if you cleave to a girl, then you will oh gosh, you could actually pass on cervical cancer to them, and you could put their life at risk.
What an amazingly good answer. You didn't hold back at all. Do you know it's really hard to avoid? It's not like you only get it if you behave in a certain way or live in a certain way. Basically, everybody gets it, right? What do you think the kind of goal is of the vaccination program?
To stop it from carrying on. So if we can get everyone to be immunised now, then it stops the cancer from regenerating through the generations.
Yeah, because there's no pool of it, so we could eradicate cervical cancer altogether.
The vaccination is safe and free, yet the parents of nearly 1 in 4 kids at this school have chosen to opt out.
The higher the uptake is, the more effective it is, and if everybody had the vaccine, potentially you could not have any cervical cancer in the world.
Exactly.
So what's the barrier?
I think there are people out there that read about the risks of having this immunisation, and they also talk to other parents who are quite hung up on the risks as well, and I think that's probably the biggest barrier.
Fake news circulating on social media has put some parents off vaccinating their children. As a result, immunisation rates are dropping across the globe. This misinformation isn't based on science. It thrives on fear, not facts.
So what are the risks of the HPV vaccination? There is a 1 in a million chance of a serious acute allergic reaction, but so far no confirmed deaths, and the vaccination has been administered over 270 million times.
The anti-vaccination campaign has regressed the efforts of modern medicine.
If you want to know how to prevent your kids from getting HPV-related cancers, get them vaccinated.
And our best four-legged friends may also have a role to play in cancer prevention.
The future of cancer prevention could be right under our noses. A dog's nose is a powerful detection device. It can sniff 1 part per trillion. A dog can smell a drop of blood in the volume of water held by 2 Olympic-sized swimming pools. Humans have 5 million sensory receptors in our noses. Dogs have 300 million. There's nothing that comes close to a dog's ability to detect smell. Scout can tell I've got a tiny crumb of dog treat in my pocket.
Where is it? Oh, yeah. Oh.
Combine that nose with a dog's natural affinity for protecting people, and we're onto a powerful combination that can be harnessed for medical science. In Buckinghamshire, England, Asher, Florin and Tala are about to start work at the Medical Dogs Detection Centre. They are part of a dog pack whose day job is to help humankind identify cancer using their sense of smell. Dr. Claire Guest started the centre after she personally experienced the dog's miraculous ability to detect cancer.
I was already training dogs to detect cancer from samples. Daisy, my beautiful fox red Labrador, was very, very good at detecting both bladder cancer and prostate cancer. She started to become a little bit strange around me. She kept on jumping towards my face with these great big brown eyes and jumping towards my chest. I sort of laughed it off and pushed her off, and she went for a run round. But I was left sort of rubbing my chest, thinking I felt I could feel an old bruised area. To cut a long story short, I found a lump. And the biopsy on the lump came back negative, but I went on to have mammograms, which indicated that I had a very deep-seated tumour. At the time, there was huge scepticism to dogs being able to help cancer diagnostics in any way at all. And I was able to go out and say, look, this happened to me. We've got to understand how Daisy did it and therefore save thousands and millions of lives in the future.
Detecting cancer through smell captured the attention of the UK's NHS, and now they're investing in research. The hope is that dogs will help highlight inaccuracies in traditional testing methods. Each dog is taught to sniff a specific cancer. Trainer Rob Harris and his dog Kizzy are going to show me how it's done.
Well, Kizzy, the dog you're about to see work, she's trained to detect prostate cancer specifically. In the carousel that you see, which is a round apparatus, there's 8 points in each part, and each part of that 8 point holds a urine sample, which is about 1 ml in volume. And they're coming from different people, but one person will be positive for prostate cancer. So what we're going to do now, Richard, we're going to put her coat on.
Ah, yes.
And this will signal to her that she's about to work. Easy. Indication.
Correct.
So she's indicated to me that this one's positive by the sit. And all we're going to do is give her some food reward.
Oh, wow. So clever.
Cacao.
Incredibly, the dogs have a 93% success rate for detecting prostate cancer. Though with millions of cancer sufferers around the world, I'm curious as to how the dog's skills could be developed on a mass scale.
The dog is this fantastic biosensor, but he's got a fluffy coat, a waggy tail, and he likes to go for a walk. So it makes sense with the number of people in the world that are going to suffer from cancer for this to be translated into electronic nose that has an artificial intelligence component. So it can learn from the dog. Hey, here are the notes, and when they're put like this is really cancery, this smells really cancery, this smells much less cancery. The artificial intelligence will then learn that, OK, I think I know what cancer smells like.
The dog can teach the machine.
Absolutely. So if we can discover with our bioelectronic nose how the dog makes his detection, what this melody is, it will transform things in the future. The quantum physicist that I'm working with believes it could even be an iPhone app. I mean, it could be that straightforward. You'll have a sniffing phone. So I think the one thing about technology is that once it has this signature, it's going to move very quickly and should become available to many, many people around the globe. So it will make a huge difference to millions.
The idea of a phone being able to detect cancer at stage 0 is tantalising. Technology offers many exciting possibilities for cancer prevention, but in some cases, the speed of development exceeds medical scrutiny. In California, a new idea in fitness has emerged, with a gym focused exclusively on cellular health. Members are trying to hack their cells to improve their well-being. They're called biohackers.
Bulletproof Labs is the world's first ever human upgrade center. And so what that means is that we leverage the world's most cutting-edge technology, optimizing the chance at living your best disease-free life.
Are you offering a silver bullet here?
I think in some ways, yes. And a core belief that we have here is that everybody's already superhuman. The system has everything that it needs to thrive. Sometimes there's things on top of it that hold it back. Inflammation is one of those things. Inflammation is, in many ways, the root of all evil.
Totally agree with everything that you're saying about inflammation, and it is really a pathway to cancer, and it sounds like that's what part of what you do here. Cancer is it starts from one little cell, and maybe that cell's not quite so healthy. So how do you think that the things that you do here impact on people's cancer risk?
When the systems and the cells are working really well, then it gives you better insurance that disease is less likely to occur. A cell can live well and it can live long if it has a few things. If it can get exercise, if it can remove cellular waste, if it can take in good nutrition and clean oxygen and water, it loves light. And so with us at Labs, we essentially train your cell with light, with cellular exercise. We help it remove waste. We help it take in good nutrition and light. And overall, the inflammation goes down and the cell gets stronger.
Cancer is cellular. It's the way our cells divide and replicate that causes cancer. So the idea of finding a way to prolong the life of cells makes sense. But the people using these devices are essentially guinea pigs. There's not a wealth of peer-reviewed scientific evidence to back up these assumed health benefits. For Angela, who survived stage 3 breast cancer, the appeal of enhancing her cellular health is enticing.
It's amazing. Just calms the whole nervous system. Total reset. As a cancer survivor, I feel like, anything that I do health-wise is to prevent that from hopefully ever happening again. It's changed me completely, and I remember the feeling of how dark it was and thinking that nobody should ever have to go through that, and the pain and the sickness that I experienced from the chemo.
You're someone who's been through a pretty rough time, and now you've kind of gone a wee bit off-piste, because these things, the biolab's less well established. It's outside of the kind of confines of kind of conventional treatment.
Yeah, my friends and family kind of laugh at me. They think, what is this stuff that you're doing? But whatever it takes, sticking sensors to my head, breathing interesting air, whatever it takes.
I don't believe there is a silver bullet for cancer, but I'll give it a try anyway.
So the EEG Brain Trainer is going to basically train your brain to stay in the present moment for as long as possible.
It feels like a mild electric shock.
One of the things we do know about precancerous cells is that the voltage is significantly lower than normal acting cells. Now we can apply the direct charge to those areas, keep the cell at a higher voltage, and keep it healing itself the way it should. This is the red charger, and we're exposing your entire body to infrared light. It deeply penetrates even to the organs, into the intracellular system, and it actually stimulates the cells to grow more mitochondria.
It's feeling really cold in here.
Negative 220. This is cryotherapy. It's a very intense cold exposure for your body, and it's a whole reset for your autonomic nervous system.
Pretty skeptical about biohacking. I have this kind of deep mistrust of the slick marketing. The language it's used is very non-specific and almost meaningless. As a doctor, I think the way that the structure of their interventions makes me uncomfortable because I'm used to things being backed up by evidence and trials and peer review, and I think that's very important for safety. Medical freedom is a concept that I struggle with. Basically means that we take all the risk upon ourselves when we try something new or untested. I can't say I feel that much different. I feel good now, though, because I'm down at the beach and the sun, and sand, and the sea.
I get the idea of using new technology to try and hack your health, but we need to be cautious about investing money, time and effort on something unproven. At this stage, I think traditional diet and exercise are safer and cheaper options. We make billions of new cells every day. Every cell contains 3.2 billion letters of code that have to be perfectly copied from one cell to the next. Our body's immune system hunts down any imperfect copies and destroys them. And if this doesn't work, the mutant cells are programmed to self-destruct. But sometimes one gets away, and this can be the first step towards cancer. When these mistakes happen in sex cells, an egg or a sperm, this change can be passed on to the embryo, and every descendant that follows will inherit the mutation. This is how cancer gets passed down through families. The technology to detect genetic cancer has progressed enormously in recent years. And today, there's an effective medical intervention that can prevent genetic cancer being passed on to embryos. It's called pre-implantation genetic diagnosis, or PGD. It's safe and it works. PGD uses IVF techniques to create embryos from couples who carry genetic diseases. The embryos are then screened, and only the ones without the defective gene are implanted into the mother's womb.
Can you sort of paint me a picture of what this means for a man and a woman who want to have a baby?
Yeah, so it means you're taking the joy of making a baby out of the bedroom into our environment, not that joyful. Then we ask a woman to take drugs for around 2 weeks to stimulate her ovaries to produce a batch of eggs. We'd then remove those eggs, inject the sperm, grow them into embryos, and then test the embryos for the presence of these particular genes, and then choose not to replace the embryos that are affected.
So essentially selecting an embryo that does not have the cancer gene.
Yes, so it's a fantastic thing to do not only for your children, but also for your children's children. It's essentially getting these really bad genes out of your family for generations to come.
And that's why parents take the trouble to do this, don't they? Because it's not a simple process, is it?
It's not an easy process, and it's not a process that is definitely going to result in a baby, but it's the opportunity for them not to pass on these genes to their children, which is a great thing. Are we designing them? We're just removing those really bad genes from their future.
Globally, PGD is widely accepted, but it is still controversial because some clinics illegally offer it for sex selection. PGD is banned outright in Italy for religious reasons. But even for cancer prevention, there are still moral issues. Some argue this is unnatural selection. Elise is 26 and has known she was BRCA positive since she was 19.
Hi, Elise. My name's Mary Birdsall. Nice to meet you. Okay, come on down.
Thank you.
Her future children would have a 50% chance of inheriting the gene, which increases the risk of developing breast cancer to 72%.
So, Elise, this is your uterus, and it looks a healthy, normal uterus.
Elise is currently deciding whether to use PGD to conceive a baby.
So I just wondered, with the embryos that obviously do have the positive BRCA gene, what happens to them?
So they're your embryos, and you could either choose to ask us to discard them, or we could give them to you for you to take home and look after as you would wish to. What you can't do is give them to anyone else, and we're unable to put them into your uterus.
And with that, obviously it's an embryo, so it could, if it was in your uterus, become a baby.
Yeah. Yeah, which is a hard thing to get your head around, isn't it?
Yeah.
Some people find this whole process, just not a process they want to go down. So then there's also the option of choosing to get pregnant the good old-fashioned way and then have a test during pregnancy to determine whether or not your baby carried the BRCA gene, and then make some decisions during pregnancy. For many people, that's tougher.
For sure.
Yeah.
If my mum and dad knew when they were having me that they had this gene that they could potentially pass on to me, would my parents have decided not to have me? For as long as I can remember, I've wanted to have children. When you're growing up, you think, oh, well, I'm going to find a man and fall in love and have babies with him. But for someone who has the BRCA gene, you've got a bit more to think about in that respect. Do you find a man and fall in love and then ask him to provide a sample so that then you can have babies with him? It's a bit of a different conversation.
And there are these really tricky questions around the ethical kind of dilemma of discarding embryos that are BRCA positive.
Yes. And that's the controversial part to me. They medical waste, basically. I somewhat feel guilty about that part of it. There are people out there who so desperately want to have children that, they might happily take my BRCA positive babies, So there is that part that I feel a bit of guilt about. So I'm a little bit undecided as to what I want to do.
Oliver and Trixie are among the first children in Australasia to have been conceived through PGD for cancer prevention. Their mum, Stephanie, lost her own mother to cancer when she was just 23. After discovering she'd inherited the BRCA gene, Stephanie learnt she had a high risk of developing breast and ovarian cancers. She decided to undergo a double mastectomy. But Stephanie and her husband, Jamie, were adamant they didn't want their offspring to experience a similar ordeal. For them, PGD felt like a humane option.
Did you have any doubts about PGD?
It was quite obvious to us from the start that we should do it. There wasn't really anything holding us back. It couldn't be put off because I needed to have the surgery to remove my ovaries. So it meant that there was a window that was available for us to try to do this. And we're very lucky that we had success with it twice. They won't be subjected to the things I've gone through, that they won't pass it on. And I feel quite
teary-eyed sometimes, thinking that I was able to do that and how lucky we were that we had the opportunity to do that.
They're not totally guaranteed to not get cancer, but they're not running at like 80-something% chance of, getting it, And people aren't aware that this sort of thing is available for numerous things now.
That's right, yeah.
And, it can save you a lot of heartache down the track.
Yeah, especially for Trixie. She won't have to do any of those prophylactic surgeries to avoid cancer. Yeah. And neither will any of her children or Oliver's children. It's just fixed it. That must feel good.
That's right, yeah, absolutely. All life on Earth has a genetic blueprint, an instruction manual that tells cells what to do. Nature has always made these decisions unaided, but we now have the technology to manipulate the code of life.
Gene editing is one of the most wondrous developments of modern science. It offers enormous hope for eradicating cancer because we can target it directly. Using this technology to prevent cancer would seem like a no-brainer. But what if it means changing the course of 3 billion years of evolution? Some say that's playing God.
Inside this secure facility in Auckland, scientists have altered the DNA of Gala apples to create a new super apple rich in cancer-preventing qualities. They are housed in a hermetically sealed glasshouse where the only way is in.
Come on in.
In accordance with New Zealand law, nothing is allowed to escape into the outside world.
Pretty space-aged, isn't it?
These genetically modified apples have enhanced anti-inflammatory properties. They're redder and they grow quicker. And they're also working on a way to make the plants fruit more often.
All of the plants in here are genetically modified. They've got either genes introduced into them or genes knocked out of them.
These apples look abnormally red to me.
Yeah, it's not just the fruit, but the leaves, the branches, the stems, trunk, and even the roots are red. It's had the anthocyanins turned right up.
Anthocyanins are kind of have an anti-cancer property.
Yeah, there's lots of research that shows that they might be involved in reducing free radicals, and that's a good thing because free radicals are associated with higher chances of getting cancer.
So maybe one of these apples a day might keep the doctor away.
Yeah, multiple types of doctors.
The big surprise is the apples are even red on the inside.
Oh, it's bleeding. Wow. That's amazing. It's so different, isn't it?
Because the seeds of these new apples contain the engineered DNA, it means that if they ever ended up in the outside world, this forbidden fruit could change the evolution of apples. This is why gene editing is controversial. If you alter the DNA in a human sex cell, an egg, sperm, or embryo, then the edit will be passed on to future generations. This tool could be used to remove something undesirable, or, like the apples, to add an enhancement.
How can the technology that changes the DNA of apples relate to humans?
If we make changes in an egg or a sperm that would result in changes in the genome of an embryo, then those changes will be passed on to their children and their children and their children. So we'll be making permanent changes, not just to that individual, but all of their descendants.
That could be a good thing, though, because I see patients who have gastric cancer, for example, and if you did those changes in an embryo and took away the gene that causes the gastric cancer, none of that baby's descendants would have gastric cancer.
That's true, but it's very difficult to ask consent to people that aren't even born yet. That's one issue. And the other thing is I think there's a societal issue that society needs to make these choices around we should be making changes that will change the population forever. And I think that's very tough for most people because they would think that we're playing God.
The fear of engineering designer babies is rational, and there are unconfirmed reports of this happening around the world right now. However, for some cancer researchers, excitement lies in genetically modifying non-sex cells inside existing bodies. This type of gene editing is used to treat consenting adults with health conditions. The stakes are much lower for the human species because they can't pass on the modifications to future generations. At the University of California, San Francisco, Dr. Alex Marson leads the Marson Laboratory, which focuses on gene editing for cancer treatment. New techniques use molecular scissors to cut out the bad bits of genes that cause disease, including cancer. That's kind of like surgery on DNA.
Yeah, that's the goal that we'd like to apply to cells and the genomes that control cell function. And what that means is that we have to find ways to actually introduce this molecular scalpel into cells. We want to cut out the parts of the genome that may be causing disease, or actually do precise replacement and actually fix mutations that are preventing cells from working properly. The field is moving faster than I could have imagined. And things are possible that we're doing now in the lab right now that were inconceivable a year ago. We're seeing incredible results of using the immune system to redirect it against cancer. And now there's several new classes of cancer treatments where the central target is not necessarily directly the cancer, but actually using the immune system to search and destroy cancer cells. And so we think we're going to try to work towards engineering human T cells that are more effective at finding and eliminating cancer cells. This is a major goal in the lab right now.
So human T cells are white blood cells that circulate in the blood, and they are involved in the body's immune response to cancer.
Exactly.
And that's where you see this therapeutic application of genetic editing.
That's right. And there's now emerging clinical evidence that this is going to work. In the past year or so, there's actually been FDA-approved drugs that are now T cells. We're at a moment of great optimism.
This is a time for great hope, but should also be a time for great caution. Never before have we had the power to change who we are by altering the course of human evolution. Our struggle with the ethics of gene editing has only just started. We urgently need to talk about the boundaries that we put around this type of technology and how we harness this extraordinary force for the good of everyone.
Phil's resorting to mind games.
So long as you don't cock it up, then why would they move?
But once all is said and done...
Even Kirsty would be jealous.
She would love that. This room lifts my heart.
Will it be his mind that's changed?
Isn't that amazing?
Love it. List it, I mean.
Kirsty and Phil's Love It All Listed, Wednesday 7:30 on 1 and on demand.